Morning, Bluewater, and welcome to the Bluewater Backstage podcast. My name's Tim. I'm one of the pastors at Bluewater Church in Sarnia, and I'm here for the first time with his face in front of the camera. He should be on the ones and twos. Not only, actually, he is on the ones and twos. Not only is he on the ones and twos, but he's also with us here, facing the camera.
Yes.
It's our very own producer, Bob.
Yeah, I'm excited. Although I will say it's a little weird to be on this side. I feel a little out of my comfort zone.
Yeah. Well, you wear a lot of hats around here at Bluewater. One of them is as producer Bob.
Yes.
If you flip it to the other hat, you put on the hat of Pastor Bob.
Yes.
So tell us about what you do here at Bluewater.
Yeah. So I oversee all the graphics and media and that kind of stuff, which is not so much the pastor side, but the media side. And then I also am the worship pastor here at the Divine Campus. So all things worship I oversee here, and then I collaborate with Andy on worship across both campuses.
Yeah. So talk to us a little bit about this, because I had a conversation just this morning with someone who is new to Bluewater, and they had no context for what we do, and they're just kind of making Bluewater their home. And it was like, they were like, what goes, like, how does this work? And it was a reminder to me, like, oh yeah, not everybody has walked this journey with us. So can you tell us a little bit about the particulars about Bluewater, how we go with multiple campuses? What does Sunday look like? Talk to us about how this comes together.
Well, you tell me if I'm going the right direction. So at Bluewater, we have the two campus setup. So we do the same service across both campuses, but I think the way we kind of say is different personalities. So we do the same songs on Sunday, same sermons that are written, but then we also have the separate leaders there. So Andy leads worship at Wellington, I lead worship at Divine, and likewise with Tim and Scott. And then on a Sunday morning, if that's what you want me to talk about, on a Sunday morning, we have, open up the Word of God. We have times of worship. We do 3 or 4 songs on a Sunday, and then we have catechism. And it's the flow. Yeah.
It reminds me, so some churches that do the multi-campus, multi-service thing have a what has been described as a franchise model, where they want, like, hey, if anytime you walk into one of those campuses, one of those services, it feels the same. It's kind of cookie cutter. It's just like, hey, it's the same across. In one sense, we are like remarkably cookie cutter.
Right.
In one sense. Right. Like the sermons are the same sermons. Right. The songs, generally speaking, are the same songs. Yeah. And yet there is a massive difference in the feel when you walk. Like, Wellington is very dark. Those were the design decisions, right? Like, some people have uncharitably described that setup, but like, let's be charitable. Let's call it the theater mood. Sure. Right. Yeah. It's very dark, very kind of homey, and then you walk into Divine and it's bright. And if the sun's out, like, that room is bright. Yeah. And bright. The ceiling's super high and it's kind of soaring. And so in one sense, it is the same at Bluewater, but in another sense, it's really distinct.
Yeah, it is cool. So I have not been to a Wellington service in probably about 3 years since.
Oh my goodness!
Yeah, I haven't been over there. So I don't know what it's like now, but I do remember what it was like, and I've been to like other like Blue Christmas and that kind of stuff. I was there,
we need to talk to the boss and see if we can get like a little, just
that'd be cool.
Maybe a
flip between Andy and I.
Yeah, like, send you guys back and forth.
That'd be cool. But no, I think that's that. So I will say the two campus thing, we do it in a way where a lot of it's very similar. But what I like about it is, and I don't even know if there's a way to measure this, but like you said, there's very distinct personalities and feelings at each campus. But then the core of what Bluewater is, obviously what we believe, the way we worship, what we emphasize in worship is all very much the same. Yeah. And so what's cool about that is, like, even looking at Andy and I, so like, for the people who don't know, Andy is my worship mentor and has been my whole life. And so him and I are different in the way we express worship. But it's kind of cool to be doing the same thing on a Sunday in different ways, but the same core belief. So it is, I think it's cool. I think I've always said, I think since the beginning we did, from when we started the Divine Campus and went to the multi-campus stuff, I think it's a superpower in that Bluewater now has 2 different personalities to serve people with, which I think is really cool.
With the one heart, right?
Exactly.
Like pretty early on, we identified, and you were part of these conversations, like when we were looking at, are we gonna do this multi-campus thing? And we identified, okay, what makes Bluewater tick? And the mood wasn't what makes Bluewater tick, right? The vibe is not what makes Bluewater tick. What makes Bluewater tick is like, how would you say it? Like a unreserved, unashamed. We are going to hold tightly to the Word of God. We are going to be contemporary as much as we can in our vernacular. When I say vernacular, like how we express worship, how we talk about the Lord, and all these things. We're going to be very contemporary in that, but we are going to hold tightly. And there is going to be not one, as much as we're able to, we're not going to waffle at all from God's Word. Yeah. So how'd you get here, man?
To the seat or to Bluewater?
Well,
both.
Hit both.
So how did I come to Bluewater? So, well, yeah, it's kind of crazy. It's been, I think, 5 years since I've been here, maybe 6 years now. I've been on staff. I think I'm on staff for 5 or 4 years. So yeah, 6 years we've been here. So, I guess it depends on how far back you want to go in terms of how I got into worship or how I got here to Bluewater, but.
Yeah, you tell us your story.
Okay.
Whatever we need to know.
So
I was born at a very young age.
I was born into a Christian family. So I'll go from ministry, I guess. So I got into ministry when I was quite young, like when I was a young teenager. Started leading worship in youth group and whatnot. What
was your first guitar? What make?
My first guitar was an old Norman, a Dreadnought Norman. Man. That was my parents.
Hey, listen. The Dreadnought Normans. That is, I would be willing to bet that almost every worship leader in Ontario started on a Dreadnought Norman.
So it's actually kind of cool. Yeah, I still have it to this day. It was my parents that they bought in like, I think the 80s or the 90s.
By the way, I did too.
Yeah? Yeah. And so when I started learning guitar when I was younger, because I grew up my mom was a great singer, so I grew up with her kind of musical side. So, grew up in a Christian home.
Not your dad so much?
What's that?
Not your dad's musical side so much?
Not so much. Okay. I don't know if I want his musical side.
Actually, you know what's funny? I've not heard him sing.
So, I have heard him sing at a funeral once.
Oh.
And he's actually quite good. And then my papa was in like quartets and that kind of stuff. Like, he's like a singer. And like to this day, still loves that stuff.
Okay. Yeah. I am hearing Dave Lane solo.
Yeah. He can do it. Next sermon, he can end it. But no, so I grew up in a Christian household with music. So then the next natural thing was in youth group, I started leading worship. My dad was a youth pastor, so that was kind of the bridge, I guess, to that. And then I remember distinctly when I was 15 telling myself that I would never lead big church. I was never going to do that. I was just going to do the youth thing because I never had the interest in leading worship. It was actually Andy, of all people, who brought me into worship. And so Andy, when I would have been 15 or 16, kind of brought me under his wing at Temple Baptist way back in the day, about 10 years ago now. And I started leading worship with him, started leading worship on stage and big church, as you call it. And then...
Like Sunday morning, we're talking.
Sunday morning, yeah. We called it big church because we were so small. And then, did other worship stuff during that time, and then I think it was 2020 when we began to come to Bluewater, and then I slowly got involved with the worship team there, and then I started here as an intern in 2022 I think I started as an intern, and then that led to working here part-time. Then Divine happened, and then here I am.
We just kept adding hours and roles and responsibilities, and hashtag more work for Bob. That's one of our favorite things around here. You don't just lead worship in church. Mm-hmm. There's another ministry that you are spearheading that kind of runs alongside that. Tell us a little bit about Backyard Worship. Yeah.
So Backyard Worship is a... so the vernacular we use is we're a worship collective that puts on worship nights for the local community. The deep heart of seeing the church unified, but then also just creating a space outside of church to come together and worship. Backyard started back in 2018 when I was 17. And it was kind of born out of, the way I usually phrase it was born as kind of a response. So at that time, myself and kind of our peer group in the youth world were feeling as though we were getting very exhausted with the highly produced worship. And not that that's wrong, it has its place. but we felt that we were very deeply hungering. I guess the best way to say it is like just the purity of worship. So then myself, a couple other friends, Brandon, my brother-in-law, being one of them, who wasn't my brother-in-law at the time. Seth Kember, Mitch Woods was actually part of it. We all kind of came together and were like, what's the best way to just kind of come back to the purity of worship? And that was acoustic worship nights that had no bells or whistles. For the longest time, we played with like a blown out speaker, and like it was super janky. But we just met in these living rooms and worshiped and kept it very simple. And over time, that has developed into us doing worship nights now in a barn in Watford. Sounds a bit better. We don't have a blown out speaker anymore, but it still keeps that same heart of there's no show or production or lights. It's just coming together all on the same level ground and just worshiping together.
I remember dropping off Austin at one of those early ones out in, was it like off Mandamin? Maybe?
Probably, yeah. We used to do it in different places.
Right across from the little church, the little Mormon church or whatever it is. And he was like, Dad, you can come in. And I was watching all these teenagers walk in. I was like, buddy, nobody wants me there.
We used to do it. Well, it's funny because we used to do it in actual backyards, and that was probably one of them. So it's been cool. We've seen what's been cool with that ministry is, so a big heart of it is unity. So the idea behind it is that no matter what denomination you come from, if you proclaim Christ as Lord, like, come and worship. But then also it's been cool to see the kind of what you're saying, like, I guess the generation that's below me now, I'm no longer the next generation, but the generation below me have a deep hunger for Christ and kind of not want the, like, all the spectacle. And so we've kind of witnessed like a cool, I don't want to put the word revival on it because I feel like that's a loaded word, but like, definitely a cool move of Christ towards Christ in that space, which is cool.
Yeah, it's not just kids anymore.
No.
So I need to clear that up.
It's all ages,
Yeah. And like, I'm surprised. I'm genuinely surprised because like it's not quiet.
No.
It's, it's big and booming. And I would imagine people with hearing aids don't love it so much. But every age group is like astonishingly well represented.
Yeah.
And there is like such a sense of expectancy with people walk in that room, right? Like you can see it, you can sense it. People walk in with the sense that like, hey, we are here to meet the Lord, and it's a really fun experience. So as we're recording this, there's one tomorrow night
on Saturday.
Okay, Saturday, yep. And I'm very much looking forward to being there for that, and it'll be really good. How can people find out about? So we've been pumping the tires for Backyard for a little bit. Is someone still listening to this going like, okay, how can I find out more about this?
Yeah, the best place, so we do have a website, which is there if you need it. But the best place I think to go is probably our social medias is where that's kind of our most active spots. Or we do record and write music. And so you can listen to music on Spotify, Apple Music, anywhere you find your music.
Yeah, so backyardworship.com?
Backyardworship.ca.
Cool. Yeah. Very good. We've been talking about worship. So, Bob, you are the worship pastor. What is worship?
So, worship. So, there's many avenues you can go with, I think, saying what worship is. Ultimately, I think it's Psalm. I have it written, Psalm 29, I believe it is. I would say the best definition, concise definition of worship, especially within the context of music, is ascribing the glory due to God's name. So that isn't saying that we're determining his worthiness or we're the ones who are dictating it, but we're simply looking at his word and saying, amen, what you say is true of yourself. Now, that's musical worship. That obviously goes far beyond, worship goes far beyond music. And so then the second definition of worship, which I think is the total bird's eye view of worship, is Romans 12:1, which offer yourselves up as a living sacrifice, pleasing and holy to the Lord. And Paul literally says, this is your true and proper worship. Do not be conformed to the patterns of the world, but be transformed by the renewing of Christ. And so that's what I would say is like that is worship. Across the whole field of what it is. Yeah, so
etymologically, when you break down the word, where our English word worship came from is worthship, right? So we are attributing worth, as you said, glory or value. We're attributing value to the one who is, oh, by the way, most worthy. The only one who is most worthy of it. So why music? So this this encapsulates all of our being. This encapsulates who we are. But why music in particular?
So I think, well, the first thing is that you don't have to go too far into the Word or into the Psalms to see that music clearly is something the Lord wants from us, and He wants us to declare His name. And I think there's multiple reasons. So the first thing is, I think there is a cool nature of music in that it is one of the only things, or maybe one of the few things that a community can do together, and there's a power behind it. And I think that most people could tell that of like, if we were to, I don't know, just speak something on Sunday morning, there's a difference in singing it with music, and the Lord has created it in a very beautiful and cool way. But I think one of the important factors about music is that there is a very declarative nature to music, of being able to come together and declare the truths of who God is as one unified voice. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, music has a way to touch
Totally.
the emotions, right? Like, it's, kind of penetrate a.
Yeah. Well, there's a language. There's a quote. I forget what the quote is now, but it talks about the whole idea of how like music is a language that you simply could never, like, you can never communicate with music or with words what you communicate with music, because of the language that it is, and how it speaks to the emotions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But so Backyard is not a ministry of Bluewater. Like, you guys don't come under the authority of the elders at Bluewater or anything like that. It's kind of adjacent to Bluewater. So what are you trying to accomplish? You did talk a minute ago, but what is being accomplished, which is great, but what are you trying to accomplish? And then as much as it's adjacent to Bluewater, there's a lot of Bluewater people involved. So tell us, I'm banging my mic. Tell us, like, who we would know from Bluewater who's connected, and then just throw out the names of the people that are not at Bluewater who would also be connected. We want to make sure they get some love too.
Yeah. So pretty much anybody who plays music and is on staff at Bluewater is part of Backyard Worship. So Andy's part of it. Pastor Andy, Pastor Austin, his wife, and your daughter-in-law, Rachel. And then if you go to the Vine, one of our resident drummers and musicians, David Gauthier, is part of it, and Andrew Esser. And then we have some other people who come in from different churches kind of in Ontario, but another big member is from Temple Baptist, Alberta. But yeah, so to answer your question, so what's our goal, or kind of what we're...
Don't forget Jamie. We can't forget Jamie.
And Jamie, yes. Jamie's not part of Bluewater anymore, but Jamie is...
I mean, yes, she's honorary. Jamie and Taylor moved out of town.
Yes.
But it's okay, Taylor, we're not that angry that
she's one of the ones who is now part of different churches in Ontario. But yes, Jamie, of course.
She's still Bluewater at heart.
Yeah, she is. Yeah. But yeah, so yeah, you asked, what are we trying to, what's our goal?
Yeah.
So one of the things that I think Bluewater Backyard in the past few years has been led towards, and one of the things that I feel like the Spirit has put on our hearts and the Lord has put on our hearts, is creating a space where even though we aren't just a young adults and youth event, there is a big emphasis of young adults and youth, and we're probably going to sing a lot of songs that a lot of young adults and youths will know. It's kind of became a cool place where the kid who might not raise their hands on a Sunday morning or feel comfortable with doing that at these nights finds the freedom to do that. And so that's kind of become one of the big emphases of how can we create a space where someone who's like wants to engage deeper in worship, or perhaps in more of an expressionate way, but feels nervous to on a Sunday morning, can learn to almost do that in this space, to then obviously take that beyond into the walls of the church. And so like, I think that's been one of the cool things to witness is seeing students grow in their expression of worship and in their comfort of worship, and rather not their comfort, but being stretched out of their comfort of worship, because worship's not about comfort.
So if someone, because it is quite different, actually, the vibe is quite different on a backyard night compared to the next morning at church, right?
Yeah.
If someone wanted to, I forget how you just said it, but if someone wanted to increase or grow in the I don't say the way that they worship, but in their heart for worship, how would you come alongside them and pastor them into, what would you recommend that they do to grow that part of their life?
So,
and so sorry. on a regular basis with church,
Right.
as opposed to just the barn.
So I kind of spoke on it earlier, Romans 12:1. So that's kind of the passage I always go to when I'm like talking to like a younger worship leader or someone who just is like, I want to grow in worship, is that 5%, I would say, maybe tell me if you agree with this. I feel as though 10%, maybe 5% of our worship in the totality of our life is Sunday morning. And maybe even less, probably a lot less.
1 hour a week. How many hours are in a week?
Exactly. And so to take that even further, like musical worship, it varies between us, but like we're probably like at the 5% mark of like only 5% of our worship is actually musical. And like, yeah, that's probably with us pumping the tunes on the way to work and singing along in our car. But congregational worship really is not a big portion of our walk with the Lord. And so I think that it is looking to scriptures like Romans 12:1 of, and I when I talk to young leaders, this is what I talk about, of like that the way you obey Romans 12:1, the way you offer yourself up as a living sacrifice informs the way you're going to worship in a public gathering. And I think not always, but sometimes your engagement with a public gathering of worship maybe can be telling of what your private life is with the Lord in some ways. So in my own experience, and as I've grown in my worship, or my worship of the Lord, it's focusing on the behind the scenes of, if I want to be the kind of person who gets down on their knees at a worship night, I also really should be the person who's getting down on their knees in my bedroom before bed and praying, or raising my hands on my own, worshiping the Lord or singing a song. So I think, going to Romans 12:1 and learning what is it to be a living sacrifice, pleasing and holy to the Lord, and that being your primary worship, and that will spill into how you worship in a public gathering.
So what I'm hearing you say is that if you want to increase your I don't even know how to describe this. If you want to increase your worshipability, not your worshipability, but how you worship the Lord, like if you want to expressive worship. Good. Thank you. If you want to grow in that, like number one, like, hey man, how about you grow in your walk with the Lord?
Yeah. Totally.
How about you? So, how you become, a sacrifice, a living sacrifice. Like, how about you read your Bible? How about you devote some time to prayer? Yeah. How about you like put down the doom scroll for a little bit and like have a conversation with someone about the Lord? Like, how about you do some of these things? And you're saying that is, when you do that, then you will grow in your expressive worship as well.
Totally. Well, and I think with that too, like the opposite is dangerous when like you want to focus on your expression of worship in a public gathering, but then you aren't doing any of that stuff. And so like I've been in circles where obviously when someone's worshiping, you can never judge whether they have their hands up or not, what's going on inside of them. And it's not ours to judge. But I've been in circles where like, maybe it was discernment, maybe not, where there are people who hands are up, they're on their knees and tears are flowing. And, it wasn't a month or two later that they walked away from the Lord, which is super, obviously very sad. And so I think that maybe this is the way to put it is sometimes I think we can crave wanting to be more of an outward worshiper, and that is being very expressionate. And we want to be the person who has our hands in the air or on our knees, but we don't want to crave the obedience that comes along with that and behind that. And so I think it always does begin with the private obedience. I think naturally when you're in a room with believers and you live a life of obedience in the Lord's word, praying with him, worshiping on your own, the natural, I think, next thing is when you're with a group of people, you're going to be probably one of the loudest people in the room. Not that that's a marker of how deep you're worshiping, but yeah.
There was a moment that sticks in my mind. It has stuck in my mind for like what, almost coming up on 30 years now, where when I was in Bible school, one of the student who kind of became the worship leader, led at chapel often and whatnot. When he was on stage, there was a particular way that he expressed himself and whatnot. And then this one particular moment, I was sitting a couple rows behind him when someone else was leading worship. And I remember glancing over and seeing him, and this guy who had on the stage was so whatever, and calling people out to more expressive worship, was the most like stone-faced and not even singing as everyone else was singing. And like, I have no idea what was going on in his heart. Maybe his cat just died. I don't know.
Sure.
But it's just like that kind of flash moment that sort of sticks in my mind. It's like like just a Polaroid of, like, man, you'd better worship the Lord from your heart and not just as a, as a mask, or not just as a thing. So let me throw this to you. There's usually a ditch on each side of the road. What is the ditch on each side? You've talked about this, but summarize it for us. What is the ditch on each side of the road?
Yeah. So obviously the one is that, much like that story, like you're someone who comes, raises your hands on a Sunday, but then your hands are doing other things during the week, and you're not, as caring about the Lord. So it becomes about a public kind of figure or public opinion. The other ditch, I think, is that we can at times approach our worship too casually. And so I think that if we're being honest with ourselves, and myself included, I think because Sunday is always coming and it's such a regular thing, there sometimes is a sense of it just becomes the thing we do. And so when we approach the sanctuary, we come to worship the Lord, I think sometimes we lose the awe and the wonder of what we're doing, and we just kind of settle into our rhythms, and we let the song pass by, and maybe we just kind of mutter the words. And so I think there is two extremes in that. You can be someone who comes and all you want to do is get caught up in the emotion.
The
emotionalism. You get a high from it. Yeah, exactly. You receive something from it. So that's one danger. So the one danger is we're there to receive. I think the other danger is that we are there to receive in a different way, almost, in that we're just kind of coming to consume church and we're not offering. So I think both ditches can be summarized in that when we're not offering something to the Lord, we're not doing worship right. Worship's an offering, not about what we get. And so I think those are the two ditches. You always say that, and I love this, and I also think it's a great title for a book, is The Stage is a Dangerous Place for Our Souls. And how, for those of us on the platform, it is dangerous because we can get caught up in thinking it's about us.
Right.
But I also think that the stage is a dangerous thing for all souls in the room, because I think that people can come in and treat Sunday morning as a form of entertainment and or something to do, or whether that be either ditch, whether that's them wanting to have that emotional high. And we're not a church that runs sound like crazy, but some churches do, and I think that's the danger in there. But then there's also the complacency thing where we're just here to take what we want and then leave the rest.
Yeah. It's interesting that you bring that up, because I was just about to bring it up in a slightly different way, because we pray every week, I think, that the Lord would protect us from that dangerous thing for our souls, where some of us in the congregation are high and exalted above everybody else. And we understand that there's a reason for that. The reason is very simply that it's hard to lead worship if the people can't see the one who's leading. It's a functional reason why that happens. It's hard to listen to the word proclaimed if you don't see the person up there who's proclaiming it.
It's like a modern day soapbox.
It's a modern day soapbox. It's very, very functional. However, it can be so dangerous. And so here's where I want to sort of spin this and get your feedback on this. There is something in the human soul that really wants to be a worshiper. As a matter of fact, one of the old Latin phrases that describes humanity at its base is homo adorans, which is rendered worshiping man. So we are created to be a worshiping people. So you go anywhere at any time and everyone has objects of worship. Right. So you go to ancient Greece, ancient Rome, they had their pantheon. You go to the ancient Middle East, they had their own gods that they worship. We are so enlightened that we definitely don't have our own gods that we worship. Except that we have posters of athletes on our walls, and we have posters of maybe actresses on our walls, or Disney princesses, or in the Christian circle, we can, I think, be in danger of worshiping the worship leader. Yeah. Have you ever, talk to me about that. Have you ever caught yourself falling prey to that danger of like, oh, that guy or that lady, that worship leader, man, like I really want to model myself after them. And then like, I know for me, I've had that with some pastors, and then the pastors, fall or get into trouble or whatever. And it's like, oh my goodness.
Yeah.
It's a good thing I'm worshiping the Lord and not them.
Totally. Yeah. So short answer. Yes, I have multiple times. No, that's a whole topic we can go into, is the whole worship industry and celebrity culture and everything. But I do think, the way we do church is so, not we as in Bluewater, but I think as like a North American church and a modern model is like, it is very weird in that there is a stage, in that most churches have everything that the music venue down the streets has, if not better.
And there's an economic driver too.
Exactly.
Because they're totally selling like millions of records.
Yes. Yeah. Totally. When it comes to artists, absolutely. And so like, I do think that like, okay, if I go on a rabbit trail, catch me. But I think that we, in many ways, have structured. So we borrowed a lot of things that come from the secular world. So to get granular, like some people might not know this language, but like in-ears, or like the cables we use, or like the projections we use, like a lot of that
equipment.
Stuff. Exactly, a lot of equipment.
The
is
means
like,
in which we are conveying what we're trying to convey.
Yes. So a lot of the equipment we use, like there's a lot of that stuff that kind of came from the music industry first, but then we adopted it because it's good stuff, and let's use it for the Lord. I think that at some point,
and by the way, before you go, by the way, this has always happened. So our hymns were bar songs on the organ that was in the bar, right? So this is not new with our generation, but
totally. So like we're redeeming all of it's the Lord's, and we're redeeming it for His purpose. I think where things can get a little bit fuzzy is when we don't take a moment to kind of think through, like, okay, so I think a great example is fog machines on a Sunday morning, right? We're not a church that runs fog machines. I know churches that do.
It's kind of the line in the sand that we've drawn.
It is, that tends to be the line in the sand. And I'm happy for it. I think fog machines on a Sunday morning is a little hard. But that's certainly one of those areas where I've seen it been used for the glory of the Lord. I know people who use it regularly, and they have a deep heart for the Lord in that. I think sometimes if we're talking about an artist like Brandon Lake or something like that, when they put on concerts, I think in any of those circumstances where we're using the world's equipment, or we're using equipment that's often like associated with the world, when we're promoting ourselves the way the world promotes themselves, artists are promoting themselves, we really need to take the question of like, and regularly ask the question of like, why am I doing this? And what's the reason I'm using this equipment or this marketing strategy? And I think sometimes we take what the world has created and we redeem it, but not fully, in that we still kind of take part of why the world uses it.
Sure.
If that makes sense. So like a lot of the world, they market themselves as artists because they want to be famous.
Yeah. Kind of thoughtlessly assimilating.
Totally. And so like there are artists who I love who do things that I'm like, I really think that the thing I've always wrestled with is when artists are on the front of their album covers, worship artists, well, secular artists too, but we know why they do it. And I've always struggled with that, because I'm like, this really isn't about you.
Yeah.
And if this truly wasn't, if you down deep was like, this is not about me, there'd be no thought to put yourself on the album. But then it's hard because we begin to compromise it, where it's like, well, I am the artist, people need to see my face or whatever.
Yeah. But
then I'm just like, but that's one of those things where
if they can connect with me, I'll sell more records.
Yeah. And so there's a whole machine in it. And so, I forget where that even started, but I do think, yes. Oh, the idea about worshiping our worship leaders.
Yeah.
I do think that there is a very, there's kind of a double-edged sword in that. On one hand, it's awesome that worship music is utilizing stuff that brings the next generation, that promos it, all that kind of stuff. On the other hand, I think that the danger for our souls is that we can begin to worship our pastors as celebrities, and as the thing that draws us to church as opposed to Christ, kind of what you were saying. And so I do think that, like, there is, I'm a deep believer that there is probably, the enemy is probably using our love, or our desire to worship, to draw us towards worshiping man and not God.
Kind of polluting it.
I think so. Yeah. I think so. Yeah.
Is that why there's an unfortunate amount of worship leaders that end up deconstructing or walking from the faith?
I'm sure that's a big reason why. Totally. Well, yeah. You got my wheels turning. I do think that there is and I'm sure that you've experienced this, is like, even on a low level, as a leader in the church, there's always that temptation of like, the idea of church being turned into a marker for success, of like how big, like size and how better, how like all that kind of stuff. And like Backyard we're not big by any means, but there's been a little of that, of like, oh cool, there's growth here, or there's this here. And I've seen how like easy it is for these guys to probably get lost in the weeds.
For that to become
totally of like, if I begin to like, maybe show my face a bit more, or post, or my album covers do have my face on it.
Get a six pack.
A few more. I get a six pack. I perform in the rain, which some artists did recently. Like if I do those things, I might be able to just like grow a little more. And then you kind of begin to compromise over time. And I think you become numb to the compromises that you make. And so it is not that I'm pointing anybody out. I think a lot of these artists are Christians who do love the Lord, but there's just such, I think, a fine line that it's really hard to.
So how do you protect yourself from that? Like, how do you lead yourself? How do you lead the band? How do you lead others in like, hey, this is not about me. It's not Bob. It's not Backyard. It's not Andy. It's not like, how do you lead yourself and others in avoiding that pothole?
Well, I think one of the biggest things has been community of people who I can talk to, who will tell me if they're sensing that I'm making it about me or making it about us or whatever it is.
That can be dangerous though, right?
Yes.
Because of celebrity culture.
Yeah, if it's their own community.
You end up kind of invariably, and this is like, so the reason I'm bringing this up is because this is the trap that pastors fall into. You end up surrounding yourself with the people who get some little bit of power or juice or whatever from being adjacent to you, and then won't tell you no. Yeah. And then the people that do tell you no, you end up kind of like,
right. Well, that's a good point. There are people in my life who are not impressed by me at all. And those are the people who I trust.
I thank the Lord for my wife.
Yes. Well, I was going to say,
my wife is not impressed by me in the slightest.
My wife. So that actually was probably one of the main things, is that I spend countless hours talking my wife's ear off about all the things the Lord is having me process through. And so like the Lord has used her as a huge sounding board of, as we make a decision with Backyard, like, should we do this? Even little things like, should we do this concert, or should we like promote a song this way or whatever? I'm in constant conversation with my wife of like, where does this point to? But I do think at the end of the day, the big question is just like, I was talking to someone recently who said, at the end of the day, ask yourself, like, why am I doing this really? And the idea of like, the really is important, because it's like, you can ask yourself, why am I doing this? Well, I'm doing it for the Lord, and like, it's worship music and whatever. But then when you say like, well, why am
I'm doing it for the Lord, but my name is the website domain.
Exactly. And I think that the hard thing is that both can be true at the same time. And I think that that's where we end ourselves up in bad spots, where like both were true the whole time. It was for the Lord, but it also was kind of for my glory. And man, have I gone through seasons where like the Lord has brought me back continually through his grace of just like, Bob, it is not about you or any success that Backyard might see or whatever. It's fully about the name of Jesus. And so with Backyard, we've tried to make a very conscious decision of how this decision that we're making. So if we make an album cover, how does this point to Jesus, and does it point to Jesus? And even just that simple question being before everything, I think helps guide like when something's not pointing to Jesus pretty clearly, and when it becomes to be about your name and your face, like usually your answer is in that, right? But
I'm just this week was working on a sermon. I have no idea if it will have come out by now by the time this drops or not, but in 1 Kings, where Solomon, right at the beginning of his reign, he loved the Lord, but he also worshipped at the high places. And he worshipped the Lord at the high places, but he was not supposed to be worshiping at the high places. And David, it never says worshipped at the high places. Right. He worshipped in Jerusalem, and where Solomon should have been worshiping, he was. So it's this like distorted worship that ended up getting him. Right. And that's something that we need to be careful about. So listen, what a couple questions here. What do people miss, or what do people get wrong about worship? And I guess when I say this, we are talking like mostly musical worship at this point.
Sure. I think, so if we're talking about like the entirety of worship, I mean, like the easy one is that a lot of people view worship as what happens on a Sunday morning. And obviously we touched on like worship primarily is actually what happens outside of Sunday. Yeah. I think when it comes to musical worship, I think one of the misconceptions that we have in church at times is that worship is primarily, even if we're coming and giving worship to God, it becomes primarily about what we receive and not what we offer. And so I think, and I'm speaking of myself here, if I'm not careful on a Sunday morning, it is really easy to walk into a place of worship, like into our sanctuary or a night of worship or whatever, and think about, how am I going to encounter the Holy Spirit?
Right.
What am I going to feel? And we do feel, and those things happen, and they're blessings, and we do receive in worship. God's that good of a God that like we get that deep shalom and whatever, which I love. But when we enter into a service, our one focus in worship is that we are offering to God. And there's like, it's not about anything about what, obviously we're receiving the word and conviction and encouragement, but it's all an offering to God. It's not meant to be an offering to us.
Right.
So I think that's the biggest misconception we make, is that, and so with that, like we talked about expression of worship, like worship isn't about it's not about our comfort and how we want to worship. It's about us offering, which often is uncomfortable, but.
So transitioning back to Bluewater, what do you wish people knew about the worship ministry at Bluewater?
That's a good question. What do I wish people would know about the worship culture at Bluewater? I think, primarily that is that we do everything intentionally at Bluewater when it comes to the way we run our services, to make it so that people can engage in an offering with the Lord. And so that's nothing groundbreaking or earth shattering, but that really is the heart of the worship ministry at Bluewater, is that we do everything, we design it in such a way, whether it be, the way we do sound or whatever, or the way we project lyrics and that kind of stuff, and all those elements, all the creative elements, our one goal is that we are laboring towards bringing people before the throne and seeing Jesus. Yeah,
I think that's the one thing that being involved on one level as I am, like we work really, really, really hard to make it a good experience for everyone. And like we don't nail it every single time. We don't. And but it always hurts my heart when someone has some kind of complaint or something. And I'm not saying don't tell us, I'm not saying anything like that, but boy, do you guys work really hard to do everything we can to make it a genuinely good experience. As a matter of fact, one of the things that we always say at Wellington, I don't know if you say it here or not as much, but like the goal is that like the band, the speaker, the everything, we get out of the way so that Jesus can be glorified. Like we do everything that we can to not be in the way because we're too bad. Either with the mix or the volume or the playing or the speaking or like the dumb joke or whatever. Or we don't want to be in the way because we're too slick. Where people are like, ooh, they nailed it right there. So my first instrument was bass, and I fall into the trap of a couple of our bass players, especially one bass player in particular. Shout out Steve, when he does a cool a cool run or something like that, I give him the bass face. It's like and so I get a little bit caught up on that from time to time. But that's genuinely not our goal. Like we really do want to not be in the way. Again, there's a ditch on each side of the road. We don't want to be too bad and be a distraction. We don't want to be too slick and be a distraction. We really, really want people to worship Jesus.
Well, so two things with that. So number one, totally. I think that the vision I always kind of get of worship, and what as I lead teams and as I'm leading worship ministry here, is the vision of what if all of us came into the sanctuary, whether Wellington or Divine, and when we got in there, Jesus like manifested his presence in the flesh in the center of the room. And so like it is weird because there's a stage, but like what if like right in front of the stage, so we're looking towards him and you're looking towards him, all of us just like saw him, and how would that, and I know we can't obviously recreate that, but to that kind of being the goal of what if all of us weren't looking at each other but just like at Christ. But the second thing with that is that you kind of touched on it. So in terms of anybody who's listening who might want to be part of the worship team, our kind of philosophy at Bluewater is we obviously want our people to be gifted and to have a passion and talent for music, but we are a church who desires to grow people in their giftings, and we all don't need to be a Brandon Lake to be on the platform. And so with what you're saying, like we do strive for it to be excellent, but we also aren't striving for perfection. So for anybody who joins the team, we love people who are good at their instrument, but have plenty of time, plenty of space to grow, and we want to help develop that.
What's in store for music or the worship ministry at Bluewater, the music ministry at Bluewater? What's in store?
Well, we're currently putting acoustic panels in the sanctuary, so that's in store. No, I think one of the things we would love to move towards, and we've talked about this for about a year now, but we really, really, really want to move towards developing the like in-house creative elements, and one of those being songwriting. So we would love, if we're talking like 5 years down the road with Bluewater, to see our church regularly singing songs that are written by our people. So we're currently brainstorming like how to make that possible and achievable with multiple people in our church, but that would probably be one of the biggest emphasis, is how can we get Bluewater singing our own songs.
So like within the next 6 months, within the next year, we're gonna have a Bluewater worship song.
That's the goal.
Nice. Well, that'll be
we would love to. Yeah,
that'll be good. What last things have we not talked about that we should talk about?
No, I think we talked about most of it. Yeah, I guess other than anybody who wants to join the worship team can contact me.
What are the particular needs right now across the?
So I would say that at Divine we have a deep need for drummers.
For quality drummers, right?
Yeah, good quality drummers. We really do want to develop worship leaders, like people who want to lead worship. With that being said, like that's not just a vocalist, that's someone who's willing to be discipled to become a worship leader and lead Sunday mornings. And then I think at Wellington, you guys are probably, your biggest need is probably keys, I think.
Yeah, we do.
From what I hear. But which we have plenty of those here at Divine, so we don't need any more keys. But that's probably the big. And then honestly, like we're always looking for people to help out with like lyrics and like sound and whatnot. So
I'm not sure when this is dropping, but what's the next Bluewater or the next Backyard song that's dropping?
The next Backyard song is dropping. It's called Behold, and it's coming out this might be telling us to when we record this, but it's coming out middle of May. So
okay,
so maybe it's already been out by now.
Okay, all right. Well, I'll tell you what. Can you in post? Can you drop the video in right here?
Sure,
that would be great. Yeah. Well, listen, thank you so much for listening to the Bluewater Backstage podcast. We are so glad and thankful that you got to this point in the show. Producer Bob on the ones and twos and on the microphone this week. Thanks for helping us out. We appreciate that, and we will be praying for your ministry, not your ministry, but the ministry that you do, not only here at Bluewater but also with Backyard. And so if anyone has any questions, comments, concerns, they can email office@bluewaterbaptist.ca, drop the word podcast or backstage or something in the subject line, and that'll get to us. If you have any questions, like theology questions or topical questions that we want those guys to talk about this, I wonder what those guys think about X or Y or whatever, then we are always looking for things like that. So please feel free to let us know about that. So having said all that, we really do appreciate and value that you have gotten to this point in this podcast. We don't take it lightly. We don't take it for granted. We are grateful. We hope that what we say is beneficial to you. So having said all that, my name's Tim.
My name's Bob.
You are loved.